Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Purnell, the Outfluencer, and your powerful presence mentor. Today, I have a super special guest. I don't even remember where we met. And Jocelyn's going to remind me. Jocelyn Bellows is joining me today. She has a program and books and all kinds of amazing stuff around the concept of breakdown to wake up. That is her coaching. She is an author. It's her first book. She has a TV show and podcasts. Just amazing woman that I wanted to bring on with me and talk about her journey and how she broke down to wake up and what that means to all of us. So Jocelyn Bellows, welcome to One Sharp Sword.
Wayne, thank you so much for having me on the show. And yes, I want to start by sharing how we actually connected. So, because I remember, I think you and I had actually connected because I invited you to be a guest on my TV show, and that will be coming out in the next couple of months or so. I can't remember quite the booking date, but when we connected and we had this amazing conversation, we talked for, I don't know, an hour and a half. Typically, yes. I talked for like 30 minutes, and we had so much to share that. And then you invited me to be here, so I'm really excited and grateful to be a part of your show today. So, yeah.
But to jump, that's awesome. So I remember our long conversation. I just didn't remember what was the initial connection, and it was that I was looking for interesting connections. I had asked my assistant to reach out, and that's awesome. And then when we did, we'd set like a half hour to talk, and an hour and a half later, we were like, we have to be on each other's shows. Let's do this thing. That's awesome. So Great. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. You are helping people with what I call the big bounce, like people who pretty much every one of us as humans goes through this journey of a climb, and we set our sights on something we think is going to bring us happiness. And along the way, the road is never smooth. And sometimes we get in our own way. Sometimes there are massive obstacles that we're given to deal with. And sometimes it's a combination of both. And your work is, I think you and I do similar work. We come at it from different angles. And that's what's so fascinating. And so your work is really around what I call the big bounce, which is break down to wake up. And so can you talk about how you got there before you talk about what the work is first? Like, can you talk about your journey and, what happened?
Absolutely.
Down a little bit.
Absolutely. My work is a result of my work. And when I quote my work on myself. And I'd say, so I kind of start with this. This is probably the most pivotal moment where I say my journey began. And truth be told, it's a lifelong journey. It's not just a one-time only. And if I look back over the course of my life and the repeat patterns I've seen, I've had so much more knowledge of how I've made decisions and how I've shown up in my life because of what occurred in the last few years and what I've learned about myself in my own journey of self-discovery. So today I live in Colorado. I moved out here just about 3.5, 4 years ago. And in order to make that move to Colorado from the East Coast, at the time I was married, and my husband and I took a look at the community that we were living in and said, we want something different for our lives, just for the two of us, and how we live in an environment where we wish to raise our son. And we really want to have our life look and feel different than what we were currently living. At the time, I was working in a high-profile position. I worked for something called an iBank, where we did corneal tissue recovery, and I was in senior level management. And my husband was running a bicycle shop, and I worked at this bike shop when I wasn't working full time. And along that journey, we also had a child. And so even in the mix, I was still at the shop here and there part-time. And life was busy. I mean, it was this constant churn. It was like if I wasn't at one place, I was in another place. And if it wasn't the other place, then I was full-time mom while his dad was working. And so life was really, really, really fast paced, even though it didn't feel fast, but there was no time for ourselves. We were constantly on the run. Um, and when we made the decision to make this move, it took about 9 months for us to actually move across country. And in order to do that, we had some really hard decisions to make because we knew that we were going to do this. But it meant that I walked away from my career. I had talked with my employer about trying to stay on, and everything we'd scripted was looking like I was going to be traveling 90% of the time. And my son at the time was 3, and that didn't make sense. I was like, I'm moving to Colorado to live in Colorado and be around for myself and for my son and our family. And so we made this decision. We were gung ho. I talked very openly with my employer about it. They were wonderful. They gave me a beautiful parting gift and said, "Go live your dream. Go take this next step." And I will tell you, I had no idea what was to come. But if you had told me what was to come, I don't know that I would have actually taken that leap that we did. But we make the move.
I actually want to pause you right there, right?
Yeah.
Because that is along the way, there are certain pivotal moments in your life, in my life, in everyone's life where we go, okay, looking back, if I was told this was going to happen, it would have been a big nope for me. But you know what? It turned out to be a blessing, right? It's like, if you look back as we come through this pandemic, right? If we were told a year and a half ago, hey, your life is going to be so different this coming year, surprise, it's like there's going to be no travel, you're going to be seeing the same 4 walls, the toilet paper is going to disappear. What an amazing journey you're going to have. We'd go, what? Like what? But we've all come through it. And so that's part of your big leap. And so, from time to time during your story, I'm going to go pause right there because everybody's faced this feeling of, oh my gosh, if I knew that my life was going to be like flipped upside down, way upside down, would I have actually done that? Would I have stepped in to take that on? So,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
oh, absolutely, you nailed it. And what's coming through is as I'm hearing and listening to your words, is it's the detours in our life that bring us to exactly where we need to be. Always. And it can be very, so yes, I mean, if you told me 4 years ago what was going to transpire in making this move, I don't know that I would have had the fortitude or the strength to accept and take this on. Didn't have a choice, right? That's not true. I had a choice. We could have stayed, but we chose to make this move, and whatever was going to come was going to come. But we're coming this from a really point of big excitement. So we make the move. I walk away from my career. Within 3 months of being here, I have all space because it's the first time in my life that I wasn't working. And my child, we were sending him to preschool a few days a week, and I was applying for jobs. And I had this space, but I had a lot of anxiety about what my next career move was going to be. I also know, moreover, because I had all this quiet time, my husband at the time was flying back east to run our business because it was still up and operational. But it was in those moments that I was like, I don't know myself.
mm,
I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. Forget knowing what I love. I don't even know what I like. I think the only thing I knew that I liked was I loved being out. I loved being out in sunshine. That was a beautiful perk for being in Colorado. And I got to be back on the soccer field that I hadn't played in 15 years or something. And those were the two things I enjoyed. And outside of that, I will tell you, I knew nothing because I knew who I was based on the labels I had given myself of being an employee, being a business owner, being a wife, being a mother. Those the doing of my life was how I described and showed up and I gave myself value.
that's huge. That's
And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, this is the thing that causes the big realization of it's the existential dilemma. Who am I really? Do I even know myself at this point? And here's what's so important, I think, for our audience is that it is so easy to get comfortable and just the comfort of, well, the label, right? I do this, the label of do versus the label of be, and
Yes.
be and enjoy and like and really appreciate. And that, by the way, changes. And I think one of the reasons that the work that you and I do when we see people who are stuck is they hung on to or clung to what they used to like, not recognizing that they've probably changed. The past 10 years, 20 years of life has changed their likes, their values, um, and that we don't tend to take the time to actually pause and say, who am I today? Right.
Yes.
And
We
so,
don't.
and
We
for
don't.
you,
We
that's
we get
great.
on this treadmill of life, of what life is meant to be for us, right? And I was right there, right?
Yeah.
Oh, if you had looked at if you were someone on the outside looking in at my life, I had everything, right? I had the idyllic life of being a business owner, having had a great career at that moment. So financially, we were very solid and married with a young, healthy son. And now here we are taking this next adventure in life where bank accounts really healthy, moving into a bigger home, that next like up leveling. And yet I was miserable. I felt trapped. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why. What I did recognize I had some key indicators. One is I recognized every time my spouse left to head back east, I could breathe more deeply. When he returned, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. And I was like, that's interesting. Right? That's really interesting because I have had this belief that it really needs to be the opposite, right? Not that I can't live without him in my space, but maybe that's an indicator that there's something a little off in this relationship. Long and short, within a couple of months of living here, I filed for divorce. It was a very pivotal moment that occurred between the two of us, and I filed for divorce. And I just said, I know that this is the right decision. I couldn't tell you why. I just knew it was the right decision for me. And I didn't know, I didn't have any, I had evidence, right? And I could find evidence in behavioral patterns, but I knew deep within my being that this was the step that I needed to take for me. And it has nothing to do with him, but what I had to learn about myself.
I want
And
to pause you.
then,
I
yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
pause you for a second because there are a
Yeah.
couple lessons in here that I want to pull out. First of all, you listen to yourself, that's a huge step for most people who are like, well, yeah, it's uncomfortable when I'm around this person, but that's just because there's more people in the house. Like they'll start to give excuses instead of going, no, what really is happening? Like if I'm uncomfortable around this person, it means I need to do some work and we need to do some work. And that it becomes a time for seeking something different. And it's not always a divorce. Sometimes it's we need to interact differently. This is that the partner brings something back when they come back that makes the dynamic shift. So sometimes it's a matter of we just need to figure out new ground rules since we both changed. We're in a new environment, all that stuff. But the other part that you said is interesting because I've heard this literally hundreds, if not thousands of times,
Mhm.
and I've experienced it myself. And the term is I found myself like I couldn't breathe.
Yes.
Boom. That is gigantic. If you were in a situation, if you were in a relationship, if you were in a space where everything felt like I I just felt like I couldn't breathe. Typically, by the way, this is a major point, and I want to underscore it. Typically, the feeling of not breathing is not that you can't inhale. It's the fact that you can't exhale, right? I feel like I don't have a voice is really that sense of I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I can't express myself fully is I feel I can't breathe. And
Yes.
that is huge, and the fact that you picked up on it and did something about it is gigantic. So, let's
I'm going to
continue
quote.
with
I'm going to quote a
Jocelyn.
friend. I'm going to quote a friend of mine.
Okay.
And so, a dear friend of mine, Brian Benson, who's a five-time author and very accomplished in his own right. And in one of his earlier books, and this became a signature of his TED Talk, and I love it. So it's so succinct and beautiful. Is to be yourself to free yourself.
Nice.
And we don't often do this. We often find avenues of if I act in a certain way, I will receive love from this external person. And we shallow ourselves and we bring ourselves, we water ourselves down to fit someone else's need to be receptive of love. And what that ends up doing is we end up doing more damage to ourselves because we aren't allowing our fullness of way of being to shine brightly in the world. I was guilty of this. Now I didn't totally understand that at the time, but I will tell you that was certainly part of my inability to fully exhale
Yeah.
because I wasn't expressing myself. I I believed I was expressing myself to a certain extent, but the reception I was receiving was very diminutive, and I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this any longer. This is not how I'm going to be any longer. And so, in the wake of this, and yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. This was my journey. Not everyone has to make that kind of a drastic decision. That for me was what I had to, for me, what I felt was appropriate for me to really now understand. I didn't understand at the time, love myself. I
Yeah.
had to choose myself first, and I hadn't done that most of my life. And that was probably the biggest takeaway and lesson that I learned in all of that, that time. I Shortly after the divorce, I started working with my first life coach. I didn't know what a life coach was. In fact, I was looking at a business coach, and this life coach magically appeared in my path. And I looked at these two options and I said, well, okay, I don't have a career right now. I'm sort of in this limbo state, but my life is kind of a mess. So life coaching sounds like a really, really good option. And it was through working with this accountability partner that I started to really peel back what had occurred, not just with my marriage, but what had been occurring throughout the entirety of my life. Um, and it was during that 6 months of introspection because it really started with a question. I have a lot of questions for myself. Was here I am, well educated, intelligent, beautiful, kind and smart and happy and funny. How did I end up in this relationship where I didn't feel met, loved, seen, or understood?
I want to pause you real quick. Here's a big question for you, and it's a big question for the women in our audience as well, which is this. I am guessing that you didn't come to the fact that you are well educated, intelligent, beautiful, kind, smart, all the things you said. That is not something that most women, in my experience, will look in the mirror and go, hey, I love myself so much. I am intelligent and kind and beautiful. And without going, except for that one wrinkle, or, that one little place where there's a little bit of extra flesh, and it's like, stop with the except for, right? Because you came to a place of loving yourself wholly And this is so important for women and equally as important for men. And this is it's a gigantic turning point. The other thing I want to point out is that you found a coach, right? That the idea of, and I think this goes for every single one of our listeners, is if you don't have somebody who can give you an outside perspective, you're going to keep living your life the way you've been living. And that's, that's where you and I come in as coaches. It's the we see things that other people can't see.
Yes.
And it's not we're going to tell you what to do, it's we're going to open your eyes to things that are there and guide you and offer some options into how you choose to live your life. That's awesome. So for you to find a coach who got you to a place where you can comfortably on a podcast say, because I'm kind and highly educated and intelligent and beautiful, and you just rattle it off matter of factly, that is like, I am celebrating so big for you right here, because I don't know that I mean, it's so rare to hear a woman do that. So I love that so much. I just do. I love that so much. Congratulations on being that solid. It's great. It's so great. So
I appreciate that, but I want to be really honest and frank with the audience about that. Number one, that was not something that I came to overnight.
no.
That I truly honored that about me. That is how I saw myself. It didn't happen overnight. That took at least 6 months to truly, fully imbibe that in my being. At least 6 months,
Yeah.
and that was me shutting the world out. Truly. So I filed for divorce. I start working with my coach, and I shifted my diet dramatically as well, right? And in that time frame, I turned my phone off for days on end. Turned it off because somewhere early on, I had this voice come inside my head and said, no one else is going to bail me out of this. No one's coming to save me. I am here to save myself from myself because I am my own best friend and worst critic. Second, it is still a work in progress. Because just before we got on this call, truth be told, like during Corona, I didn't exercise a whole lot this past year. And I put on some weight and I'm really not happy about it, right? It's my own, I did it to myself. I created this. And I was looking in the mirror and saying, well, Jocelyn, this isn't so great. So this is still a work in progress.
Yeah.
This being, though, having the tools and the knowledge and know how to shift how I see and perceive myself. But, to your point, your earlier point, I said that to myself to a degree that gave me an emphasis of inquisition of how did this external world appear when I have all these attributes. And the discovery was it really wasn't living into those attributes. Now, fortunately, I'm an Aries and I have a lot of bravado and boldness, but I really wasn't showing up in that way. And that was a lesson that I had to learn very, very heavily of how to look in the mirror and look at myself and really, really love the skin that I'm in, no matter what anyone has to say. And when you come from that place of being so solid in who you are and not ever needing external validation, the validation that comes from within, that's where you get to shine. That's where the world needs you. That's where we need to show up as, because when we show up in that way, we give permission for others to do exactly the same. I am going to own who I am in all of the way that I am being, in the good and in the ugly. It's being able to.
I want our listeners to hear that, right? I'm going to live into who I am, right? It's just that. And And it's only some internal voice that chooses to call it good or ugly, beautiful or ugly. That's a judgmental voice. I'm living into who I am. The other thing you said that is so powerful is, see, is this: no one is coming to save me. That is a huge statement. And what happens is what you said before um, is if I can act in a certain way, I'll receive love from this other person. And that most people do live their lives with the kind of transactional engagement for love and appreciation. And that is an old story that comes from early childhood and a safety need around don't abandon me. I'll be a good kid. And so, and right, I'll be a good kid, just don't abandon me, give me love, keep me safe. It is an adult turning point to go, I've got the love, I create the love in my life, and I don't actually need rescuing.
Yeah.
The other part
I never did.
Right? And
I never did.
That's
and yet,
the point.
And yet we are conditioned. That old paradigm is what comes with that. I'm going to take a step back. That paradigm comes from generational patterning.
Yes.
We learn how to show up based on how we were taught in our first 7 years of life. And that's based on what's we received from our parents, our grandparents, the community that we grew up in, the words that we hear that may not actually have ever applied to us.
Yeah.
It was never intended to keep us small or downtrodden, but somehow we take those on as our own belief systems because our parents learned it from their parents. Their parents learned it from their parents the generation before. And we continue to tell that story. And then add to that the media that we have now in our world, the absorption of we need to have the hair done and the makeup done and the beautiful clothing and and all of these external factors to be beautiful, to be accepted into society. That's messaging not only we're getting from our generational piece, we're also getting that messaging from the media and world around us. And so it takes a really solid state of I am okay with me all of the time.
Absolutely right. So good. And this, when we had our first discussion prior to this, that was something that resonated so strongly with both of us. The first 7 years of life, you are listening to intergenerational stories and you're building rules. Like I talk about the rules that we build based on those stories for how we're supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to be living our lives. And we may or may not even understand what the rules are. They're subconscious, right? And so to get to a place of going, nobody else is coming. I don't actually need anybody else's approval. It's nice to have, but I don't need it. And you know what? I'm okay as a whole being. I'm okay as a whole person. Fantastic. This is really good. Let's leap ahead a little bit. What are you doing now? Because this is awesome. This is like the foundation of Jocelyn Bellows, right? It's like the building of Jocelyn Bellows. So good because you did have to tear down and you did have to go, you know what? No one else is coming. And I choose to shut out the world so that I can hear my own voice instead of somebody else's voice. And this is a practice. And even sometimes now I'm going to shut off the TV and the computer and the phones and just be with me. That's powerful, right? So what about now? What are you doing in your life for yourself? What are you doing in your life for, like, how old is your son at this point? Do you get to be the mom, and do you get to be the you that you want to be? And you've taken your journey and turned it into becoming the coach that you are. um, Talk a little bit about, this is who you are in your life right now.
Yeah. Well, I want to start with Leap because it's interesting. I don't think I actually shared this with you, Wayne. My first podcast that I launched in 2019 is called Leap.
Okay. I don't want to throw away that word, so I want to emphasize it. It's called Leap.
Yes, it is called Leap. And it came, the quick story on that, and I will share where I am today. So that came out of an intuitive download. I was on a drive one day in the mountains, and a song came on the radio, and it was like this concept just came through me, and I was just a vessel. And it was at that point of stopping me. So within the half an hour, I had a name for the TV show or the podcast. Knew the first 20 people I was going to interview and what the concept of the show was going to be. Now, I had only ever listened to 3 podcasts at that point in my life. And I had no idea what podcasting was 2 weeks prior. And here I am saying, I am going to create this podcast. And so Leap started recording in 2018, went live in January 2019, and I interview entrepreneurs about what inspires them to take a leap of faith and starting their own business and starting a life and crafting a life that they love. And that was the inspiration. And really reflectively, that's the work that I was doing. What was the leap of faith that I was going to take to continue to craft the world and the life that I love to live? Because when I'm happy and I show up in this exuberance and all of it, and even in the dark, but all of it, people get to benefit from that. The universe and the world around us gets to benefit from me showing up in a big, bold way. And that's what I want other people to do too, to encourage other people to do. And that didn't happen alone. Like, I still have accountability partners all around me. So today, these days, as you sort of mentioned, I'm a motivational speaker and I am an author. My book came out in 2020 called Breakdown to Wake Up. And it was myself, and then I brought together 15 authors from across 5 continents. And this was another intuitive download that I'd received. This was the book that was going to come through me. And I invited people to step forward and share their own journeys of when they've had really dark moments in their lives, and who they found themselves to be in that process. Really stripping away those layers of falsehoods. And a lot of times it was filling voids. Like I had two gentlemen came on. Actually, ultimately, I think there were 3 of them. All had touched upon their alcohol abuse and interwoven to trauma, past traumas that they had lived in, all of which had marriages end, or if not, get very close to ending because they were using alcohol as a numbing agent to not face what they needed to face about themselves and live into radical responsibility of who they are. But the book is really that is really stepping forward and saying, look, I have been through a very, very tumultuous time in my life. And because of that, I am thriving today. Not in spite of, not I blame it, and it ruined my life. It was that worst, most awful thing and time in my life led me to discovering exactly who I am. It taught me how to love myself so that I can continue to craft a life on my terms, accepting myself for who I am, allowing others to enter my field when it is supportive to me, and saying no to what is not.
That's pretty powerful. So I do like to point out certain points along the way, right? With each of my guests, because so much gold, I think, can slip through, and I don't want to lose any of this. I want to point out you took a leap of faith to craft the life you love.
Mm-hmm.
and that is like, I take notes as you speak, right? So I have these notes, and you took a leap of faith to craft the life you love. That is a scary, scary thing. And congratulations, right? And that is something that can be done with a partner, can be done as an individual. It is something that you say, okay, here I go. Like, this is the life I think I want to love, and this is the life I want to live into. And then you have to let go of the things that you knew. It's like, I've heard it called like swinging from vine to vine, and you have to let go of the other vine in order to swing to the next vine, right? That you are swinging forward. So that is huge. And then you used a term that you got really quiet with. And I think I want to use this term really loud. Like, you live into, and this is the term, radical responsibility for uh for who you are, right? And you let you it's like, the term radical responsibility has to be a term that's emphasized. Like, I own my life. I am radically responsible for who I am becoming. That's a major declaration. And, if as an audience member, if you're listening to this, no matter where you are, practice saying that out loud. I live into uh, radical responsibility for who I am. Practice saying that out loud and see what happens to your body when you say it. That is quite the declaration. So that's awesome. That's
It's
awesome.
really funny. So just before we came on the recording today, I just posted on Facebook something to that effect. It actually was more how we talk to ourselves, the
Yeah.
inner voice, and what we say to ourselves is going to impact how we show up for ourselves. So if I say I am, I'm not good enough, or like I said to myself today, it's like I'm heavier than I want to be right now. I said that to myself in my head, and I said probably worse than that. My man, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels icky inside. It feels heavy, and not, no pun intended, but it really feels heavy. Instead, we can have that option to say, I am beautiful just as I am.
Yeah. And it's
You accept it for what it is.
and it's this body that's going to get me into even better shape tomorrow,
Yes.
right? That it's like,
Mhm.
my body is responding exactly to what I've fueled it with. That's fantastic. So this body is going to respond and get me to where it needs to be tomorrow. Fantastic. Awesome. Like, good. I like one more thing, and you didn't say it this way. I want to this is where our perspectives, we do the very similar work, and we come at it slightly differently, and I love that, because that's what coaching is, right? Different perspective. So you talked about inquisition a little while ago, and you said something that made some sense to me as well around, um, uh, well, it was around, the way you talk to yourself. So inquisition was the word, and I would call it inquiry versus doubt, right? That when you inquire, you're not instilling a doubt on it. You're like, well, what is this about? How can I change this? What about this in my life? Versus, oh my gosh, what's this about? Like, I must be, and then the judgment kicks in, right? So the idea of, well, just stay in that space of inquisition or inquiry. Stay in that space of, I wonder, I wonder what it's going to take to do XYZ. You know, I wonder. Like, that's so powerful.
Yes. But staying curious.
One of my
Staying
favorite.
curious with life is such a valuable. That was probably one of the things I learned the most value. I've always been curious about others, and that's why my podcast exists, and now my TV show now that is also a podcast is an inquiry into others, but really it's being curious about your own life. Be curious why people show up the way they do. Be curious why you are received in the way that you are. Be curious why you treat yourself in certain ways. Like, if you have a bad conversation or you have a conversation that didn't go quite as you'd hoped, do you go punish yourself by eating? Why do you do that?
How does that serve you? Yeah.
How does it serve you? That's a great
Yes.
question.
This
How
is
does it serve you?
right. This is great. What haven't I asked? What do you want to share? Um, I know that you're gonna share how people can reach you
Mhm.
and the other programs you have going on. Before you do that, what else can
A final thought?
yeah, what else should we all know to be
Yeah.
thinking about? Yeah.
So I think, oh gosh, my final thought is I'm going to stay on this being curious. Continue to be curious for yourself, about yourself. Moreover, always, 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 always choose yourself first. If you feel uncomfortable, speak up.
Mm.
You were given a voice. You were given a voice. It's time you start today by using it. Don't be concerned about what the response is going to be because it's not yours anyway. It's your responsibility to show up for yourself, no one else.
Yay. I love that. All right, Jocelyn, how do people find you? Um, you've got this amazing program coming up. So
Yeah,
talk a little bit about your program and how people can reach out to you.
absolutely. So, best way you can find me on my website at jocelynbellows.com. It's JocelynBellows.com. I am a life coach and a writing coach. And I know it sounds like it may not marry, but I will tell you it marries beautifully. So in the writing, the books that my clients that I work with are writing their personal memoirs. And when we are working through very difficult points of our lives in the writing, inevitably you're going to come up not just with writer's block. Writer's block often isn't so much that you're lacking creativity as to what you're going to write next. It's I'm shrinking because I'm concerned that someone else is not going to love and honor and accept what I have to share. Or I'm concerned that someone else is going to be hurt by what I've said. You're making yourself small. So the coaching comes in really beautifully in that. And coming out in the next couple of weeks on April 8th, I believe, April 8th, I'm partnering with the incredible Kristen Clark, and we're coming together to host a 4-week course called Writing the Book in You. We're going to tap into your strengths, your personal strengths from Clifton Strengths Finders, to continue to allow your voice to come through your writing, but also understanding who you are from that point of your strength so that you can capitalize upon those to write the most successful book inside of you. Also, you can find on my website is a free copy, PDF copy of Getting the Book Out of Your Head and Onto the Page. And that is a simple guide to get you started as you start to ideate and create the next book inside of you.
This is fabulous. All right, we will have jocelynbellows.com as a link in our show notes. And thank you so much. This is it's so good to connect with you. I love the stories, and your journey is so powerful, and it's just you're a beautiful human. It's so good to connect with you that way. So thank you for being here, Jocelyn. I really, really appreciate it.
Wayne, thank you so much. It's been such a joy. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you on my show real soon.
Yay. I look forward to that too. That's awesome. All right. Well, you've been listening, watching, depending on how you're tapping into this one. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Purnell. Thank you for being here.